Hello, thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of Vinyl and Vision. It's your host, Jimmy Drab. Welcome. Tonight's special guest is Eric Smith. I've known Eric for a very long time. He has been part of a number of bands. I've known him to be part of the LUVs, the Fantastics, Jagelinzer, and the Cold War. Most recently, he has been part of a band called the Sweet Dreams, and his newest project is called Glowing Cloud. What you're listening to is a selection off of his brand new EP called All My Psychic Children, and this is the title track that you're listening to. It's a 3-song EP. It's very short. We discuss, obviously, this release that he's just put out and the future of that project and what his plans are with it, and it sounds very exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing what else he comes up with in the coming year. So the album he chose was Neil Young's Trans, which was also very exciting. I've been looking forward to talking about this record. Just happened to be that Eric said that this would be the one, and totally excited to have him come on and talk about it. So it was a great episode. Had a lot of fun talking. He came here to the place, the shed, and we hung out and actually got to listen to the record, which is nice. So All My Psychic Children, that's available on Bandcamp now. So grab a copy of it. It's very cheap. I think it might be pay what you can. It might be $3 or $3 to $5. I can't remember. I just recently purchased my copy. No physical copy, unfortunately. It's only available digitally. If you don't use Bandcamp for whatever reason, you can also just stream the music on all digital platforms. So just go to iTunes if you use that, or Spotify, or Tidal, or whatever it is that you use, and then just add it to your library and listen to it freely. That would help. That'd be great. I'm sure Eric would appreciate it. And let's just get right into it. We ask that you please do all the things that you do with the internet. Like, share, subscribe, comment, rate, review. Do whatever you want. We'd appreciate all of it. It's great. And if you are interested in supporting our show, you can go to our website, psychicstatic.net, and if you make a purchase there of anything that's in there, whether it be any merchandise, records, or any other type of media in the store, you can purchase the record that we put out by the Hammer Party. Smash Hits is available there. And you make a purchase of any of those things, and it helps the show out. It helps us keep this thing going. So, without further ado, here's the show. Hey, can I just say cheers?
Yeah.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for coming to my home.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me here. This is cool.
Yeah. You are in the shed.
This is awesome. This is the first time I've ever done a podcast thing in person, because I've only ever started being on a couple different things.
Yeah.
But it's all been Zoom or Skype and all that stuff. So this is the first time I've ever done anything like this in person, and it's cool.
And it's always nice to be able to just speak with a person in person. And then, of course, you brought the record tonight, which you have chosen, Neil Young's Trans, which we have talked about this on the show in the past.
Have you?
Well, not as the focal point, but it's got mentioned, and I think that I've spoken incorrectly about it.
Okay.
I had an impression about it. So when you said, how would you like to do that record, I was just like, yes.
You seemed very excited.
I was, because, I love Neil Young.
Yeah.
I have not given this record a really good listen. So, and then, in the form of the podcast, I do so much more research, more than I've ever done in my life.
Sure.
As far as listening to music is concerned. So I knew there was going to be some stuff here, and so I was just happy to kind of take it on.
Yeah. Cool.
And happy that you suggested it.
Yeah. Cool.
Cheers. Local Whalers beer tonight. So Eric, so we were already talking a little bit about what you've been doing. You've been working on a home studio project, and that's basically how you got the latest recording done, the Glowing Cloud band.
Yeah, I basically, like so many other people, the pandemic forced me to do things differently. And like I was saying earlier, my band Sweet Dreams, we weren't sure when we're still not sure when we're going to practice again, probably soon, or when we're even going to play a show again,
right,
or record again, which was what we were sort of planning on doing right before all this happened. So I had just been writing so many songs at home, and I just got tired of just recording the songs into my iPhone, the notebook, the voice memo thing, which is how I used to just keep track of ideas, and I just got tired of just doing that because we weren't having band practices, so those ideas weren't going anywhere, so I just started to build up all these songs, and then I thought to myself, I had a room in my basement at my house, and I just thought, I should just bite the bullet and learn a little bit about digital recording, and I feel like I thought I was probably smart enough to at least do the basics. It turned out I kind of was.
Yeah.
I just did GarageBand, and I luckily had a bunch of gear.
Yeah, you developed that after all the years that you've been playing.
So I had all the stuff, so I just decided, I should just do that. So I bit the bullet and bought some stuff, and then, learned a lot about it, and I think, got to the point where I was able to, move up to using Logic for the future stuff. But that record that I just put out, the All My Psychic Children EP, that's all done on GarageBand.
Mm-hmm.
And then mastered, my friend Pete, who's in my band, mastered it at his studio in Seekonk on something nicer. But yeah, it was done pretty lo-fi for digital recording,
I mean, it sounds great.
Thanks.
I've listened to it. I'm listening to it on iTunes currently until I purchase it. I need to make some more sales. My business needs to pick up before I start buying stuff again. Because
that's quite all right.
I've been buying a lot lately, and I try to support everybody that's here and that does the show, and and therefore it leads into I've got 40 other albums I have to buy now. Plus I have to go back into your back catalog too. I mean, I've known about you and the bands that you've been in for, it seems like decades now, right?
I mean, yeah, I've moved to Providence in '94, and
from where?
From New York State, from near Rochester, New York. I moved here to go to school, and I was in bands almost immediately. Living at Rhode Island College, and my first couple bands there. Then a bunch of my best friends were in the LUVs, and they needed a drummer, so I was their drummer for a couple years, maybe. I don't even really remember. It's so long ago.
Was that from the second album on, right?
Yeah, I recorded the second record with them.
Okay.
After that, I was in the Fantastics, and which turned into Jagalinzer, and we always struggled with fleshing out a full band. It seemed like me and my buddy Bill were always the two guys that we just couldn't keep a drummer, couldn't find. We just, it was tough. Those years were tough. The kind of music that we were into and doing back then, nobody was really into that kind of American Britpop stuff. We felt very alone. It became super popular several years after that, but I think that when we were trying to do it, no one wanted to hear it. No drummers in town wanted to be in our band. So but we did that for a while. We never really put out a record or anything, but we had done some recordings around, did stuff here and there. But unfortunately, we didn't really have the work ethic to put out a record, and it was a little different back then. It's so much easier now. But back in the late 90s, early 2000s, it definitely wasn't as easy to put out a record if you were a local band and really didn't have any money. You had to producing CDs was way more expensive, and they were always so shitty. Vinyl was totally out of you couldn't
out of the budget.
I whenever a local band put out a vinyl record back then, I just marveled. I always was like, how can you afford that?
Right.
Because whenever we looked up how much that cost, it just was way out of our range. You know what I mean? So I didn't know how, and I just never could figure out how are these bands affording to do this. So it was much different back then. And then it was a different city as far as playing. It was a much different club scene for bands.
Yeah.
What was cool, what everybody wanted to go to, and see back then was definitely not what my band was doing. You know, it was everybody. It was, you know, Lightning Bolt and like rockabilly was like the two.
Right. Yeah.
And like, you know, alt country has been, you know, and my band never really fit in any of that stuff. So.
Yeah, the pop scene, because I mean, I would kind of categorize that into the pop realm.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's never really been a good pop scene in Rhode Island. It's always been some extreme. It's always been like some specific genre, mostly noise that's been like a really successful. And then certain singer-songwriters, like certain Americana-ish type people, so...
When I moved here in '94 was right at the tail end of Velvet Crush and Small Factory and a lot of that really awesome 60s power pop stuff that all had that sort of teenage fan club feel to it. And they were really great. And I remember those being the first couple of bands I saw when I lived here was like Small Factory and Velvet Crush. And there was definitely that pop scene then. But those bands moved away. You know, Velvet Crush moved on and sort of became Matthew Sweet's backing band.
Right.
And then Small Factory moved to New York, I think. And nothing really took over. There was some of that Terrastock psych stuff that was pretty underground, and I really was never cool enough to know a lot of the people that did that, you know. That was more like in the Fort Thunder scene before it got really noisy. But yeah, Providence is a really fascinating, weird city to do music in.
Yeah.
For how supportive everyone is, and they really are, it's hard because it can be, or at least it was back then. I feel like things are different now, and I feel like with our band Sweet Dreams, I feel like we've gotten. It's the most positive reaction I've ever had to any of my bands that I've ever been in the last 20 years, you know, and like now as we're like old guys basically just doing it as a hobby, you know, now everyone likes it.
Right. Yeah.
Not when I was 22 trying to get a record deal and trying to be like a real musician. No one wanted to hear what I was doing back
then. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, at least you can get it now. I mean, it's better than nothing, I suppose.
I mean, a part of it might have been that I wasn't very good at it, you know. I mean, some of my bands back we didn't work hard enough. We didn't have the work ethic, which I can definitely own that. Like, we were pretty lazy, you know.
Yeah.
We didn't have the work ethic to really, like, force ourselves to go on tour, force ourselves to play shows all the time, practice all the time. We were very, like, bohemian about it.
See, I think that's strangely because, like, it seems like you write so much because, like, you know, between what I've found out about this newest project that you've done. Obviously, I mean, 'cause, like, obviously you keep working. Obviously, since '94, you've been just constantly in some kind of project, to some degree, and you're constantly working on stuff.
I guess when you put it that way, yes, I guess I have been, but
so you're not terribly lazy.
I'm not terribly lazy. Thank you, I appreciate that. See, I need that validation.
You're
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I want to go back actually because you mentioned that you came from the Rochester area of New York. So where did you grow up? Where were you born?
I grew up in a little town called Leroy, New York, which is about 45 minutes outside of Rochester, right on the not right on the coast, but right on the southern edge of Lake Ontario. My mom still lives there. My mom's still alive. She still lives in the house I grew up in, and she's retired. And I grew up in a really small town that didn't really have much music or anything, but I was in bands, and my buddies were all in bands. Like, usually the only band in town was the band that I was in. There was a couple. And I moved here to go to school in '94, and I've been here ever since. I love Providence, and you know, I never really seriously considered moving anywhere else, even when, like, I think everybody, where it felt like everybody was sort of had the itch to move to Boston or New York, especially if you were in a band in the late 90s and early 2000s around here. It just seemed like that was what a lot of people did, you know. And I think that when I was maybe 21, 22, I was like, oh yeah, we'll move to New York someday. But then it never really became, I never really seriously considered that. And a lot of my friends and a lot of bands we know and knew back then, you know, did that. They moved to New York, or they moved to Boston, or they moved to Austin, or they moved to somewhere else.
Better scene.
Somewhere else. Yeah, somewhere better. But I never really wanted to do that. I always really loved Providence. I just met the coolest people here, and was always in cool bands, and there was always fun stuff to do, and I never felt wanting to be anywhere else. In fact, I think Boston sucks.
Agreed.
Playing shows in Boston has always been a huge pain in the ass. It's almost never fun. Same thing with New York. I mean, how many times can you drive to New York to be the first band on a 5-band bill before it's like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I driving to New York to play at 9 o'clock and there's no one there? And then you drive home at 2 a.m. when you're wasted, and it's just like, this is stupid.
What's even better about New York is when you go to play, and on a bill, whoever's playing, you show up and there's people in the room, and it's just like, oh, cool, there's going to be people here, this is great. And you go on to play, and everybody leaves.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then you're done playing, and everyone comes back.
Yeah, that seemed to happen more, and, it seemed to happen to my band all the time, and I was like, it can't be our band, we're great,
It's New York, they're just so privileged, so entitled, that they don't want to go see a band that they don't know.
Yeah, there's all those clubs in New York, around this time, the early 2000s, like the Lower East Side, where it was like those 2-room sort of railroad apartment clubs, where it was like 2 rooms, and the front room was the bar, and then the live room was in back. So whenever we played, which was usually first at 9 o'clock, everyone just left and went to the bar and drank. So you're playing to literally no one because it's a separate room. There's no one there.
Yeah.
It just happened so many times.
It's kind of the way AS220 set themselves up now.
It's exactly was like it. Yeah, just like that.
Right.
Where if people if they didn't want to hear music and they wanted to talk and they didn't give a shit about your band, they would just go in the other room. It was perfect if if that's what you wanted. But yeah, I have played to so many empty rooms in New York.
It's all right.
And I'm sure you know how it how it is too. Same with Boston too.
We've played many an empty room across the country.
Yeah.
So now getting back to New York and growing up there. So what was music like in the house when you were growing up?
I had to sort of find it on my own. My parents were a little older.
And do you have any siblings?
I had an older brother, but he didn't. He was older. He didn't live with us. He was an adult, and out of the house. He did give me some cassettes. Like I remember him making me, a Van Halen dubbed cassette. I think what was something else? He was into like 70s and early 80s classic rock. He was a all-American classic rock dude.
AC/DC,
Aerosmith, he would have been into all of that.
Okay.
I was younger and more of an MTV kid. Grew up listening to Duran Duran and Michael Jackson, and then like
Depeche Mode.
And then later on Depeche Mode, and like REM alternative stuff, and then of course like everybody my age, I got into Nirvana, and Guns N' Roses and Metallica. So, I had a bunch of good close friends in my town, and we were all into that stuff. Like we kind of found the underground stuff, and living in the country like we did. We didn't have as much access to like underground stuff, so it was harder to find. I think the most underground magazine that we could get in my area at the time was Alternative Press. We really that was it. So if it wasn't in Alternative Press, I didn't know about it. But we got into like all of the early '90s underground stuff when it came out, and that's just where I got into Nirvana and Sonic Youth and Dinosaur Jr. But like before that, Neil Young really. Neil Young was one of my first sort of artists that wasn't heavy metal or rock and roll or punk or whatever. Him and Dylan were like the two softer, more traditional classic guys that I got into, and it was just from learning to play the guitar. And I had an acoustic guitar, and I think I had like a Neil Young songbook, and that just led to getting Harvest and After the Gold Rush, and his early stuff, which is what all I listened to as far as Neil Young records for a really long time, until up into my 20s when I started discovering other stuff. But when I was in high school, learning how to play the guitar and learning how to write music, it was Neil Young and Bob Dylan and Dinosaur Jr. and Sonic Youth and REM. Yeah. And that was like what taught me how to write stuff.
So what? So when did you start learning an instrument, and what instrument did you start off with?
Guitar.
Okay.
And I remember I saw the Aerosmith rockumentary, and I thought to myself, this seems like a really cool way to meet girls. And the next day, I told my mom, I was like, I want to take guitar lessons. So I took some guitar lessons, and I got to get, they found me an acoustic
you
guitar.
didn't talk to your mom and say, Mom, I want to start meeting girls.
I don't know if I told her that. I probably didn't tell her that, but yeah, that was what got me into it. And then it all kind of happened, those same couple years was when it all happened. I mean, REM Out of Time came out, and so much alternative guitar music and metal and, heavy stuff that I sort of absorbed it all. And, I didn't really, I really wasn't cool, so I was listening to a lot of uncool stuff. I was listening to a lot of like the new Metallica record, which was the black one, which is still the new one to me.
It's still a classic.
And stuff like that. But I absorbed it all, and I think those years. I think when you're young like that, you really do soak up everything like a sponge.
Right.
So I was listening to that. I was listening to Primus, Sonic Youth.
Oh, yeah.
Also my a friend of the family gave me a crate of records that had Neil Young's Harvest in it, and that's the first time I had ever heard a Neil Young record that wasn't like on, classic rock radio. So that was Harvest was the first Neil Young record I ever heard as a record. And in that box of records was also like, Simon and Garfunkel's Bookends, Creedence Clearwater, Cosmos Factory, and those like vinyl staples. Yeah. And I just absorbed all that stuff. And I lived in a small town, so like all the kids in my high school listened to Rush, it seemed, or Guns N' Roses or Metallica, or Grateful Dead, stuff really sort of more mainstream, sort of small town stuff like that. So that was always around too, and I liked some of it, but I didn't really gravitate towards that as much as I did towards like the noisier stuff, Sonic Youth and Dinosaur. Right. When those bands came out, that really, really, I definitely wanted to do stuff more like that. Like when Ministry, first hit MTV, and you could see, their videos. It was just like, holy shit, like what the hell is this? Like I thought I knew what heavy music was. And then Ministry's like Psalm 69 comes out, and at that point that was the heaviest thing I'd ever heard. Yeah. I hadn't discovered like Slayer yet, but like that Ministry record is just like, holy shit, like I didn't know anything could sound this brutal. And I just soaked all that stuff up. Okay.
So how old were you when you picked up the guitar?
Probably 15.
Okay.
I think it probably would have been like 91. Yeah. And it was right around, I remember it was just like there's probably a 2 or 3 year period where it was like REM's Out of Time, Depeche Mode, Violator, Nevermind came out, Metallica, the Black Record came out, Sonic Youth's Dirty came out around then. And it was like those 2 or 3 years where I got my full education of that stuff. I just soaked it all up.
Okay. So obviously in that time period where you're kind of exploring a lot of music, a lot of stuff's being introduced to you in one way or another, you find Neil Young. When did you find this album, Trance?
It wasn't until much later on, like probably 15 years ago, is when if I had to guess, when I first came across it, and I don't even remember where or how. I just remember, I think someone had burned a CD of it somehow, because it was never commercially available on CD. So somehow I either had a tape of it, or something before it was before streaming. Right. So I knew that. And it's funny because, the first thing I noticed was, the song Transformer Man is on that record. And I think most people around our age, they're familiar with that song from his Unplugged performance.
Oh, is it on there?
He plays Transformer Man on that, and it's a very, it's acoustic, and it sounds very Neil Young. And I think it actually opened the show. If I'm remembering it correctly, it's the first song he played.
Okay.
On the special anyway. I haven't listened to the record of it in a long time. So I could be wrong, but
yeah, I'll have to
I knew that
that
song, and I was like, oh, this is supposed to be his weird noise record.
Right.
And but I knew the song Transformer Man, and I don't think you can be prepared for how fucking weird this record is. Especially when he kind of wrong-foots you with the first song.
Yeah.
Which is a very traditional, very country-inflected song that sounds like a kind of a boring Neil Young song,
Mm-hmm.
And then immediately after that, you get the rest of the record, which is just insane sounding.
Yeah. And wait, so how old do you think you were when you heard this?
Oh God, I was probably around 30 or something.
All right, so when you're mature, you're an adult. All right.
Definitely an adult. I definitely didn't hear it in my 20s. It really wasn't until then that I started getting into later Neil Young records. The later 70s stuff, which is definitely more my favorite Neil Young. When he starts getting angrier and more fucked up through the 70s, and the records take on a much darker feel, and even some of the happiest, most pleasant sounding songs are much darker.
Right. And
that string of albums is, I think, his best, and right up to Trans, where he's just extremely angry and going through a lot of crazy personal stuff in his life, which is sort of the story behind the creation of this record and why it sounds the way it sounds.
Okay. So it sounds like you have done some research as far as like the history of this album and kind of how it came to be.
Yeah, as much as I could.
Okay.
I mean, I've always known the story behind the record.
Okay.
But there's not a lot you can research. When I was trying to get prepared for this, I went and did a deep dive and Googled a lot. There's not a lot of information about this record. Neil Young, at the time, when this record came out in 82, he was not doing interviews, and he was not doing any kind of promotion on his own for this record.
Right.
So he never told people until many years later why this record sounds the way it does and what was going on in his life, because it was very private.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So the story is that in the early 80s, Neil Young and his wife have their son Ben, who is born with cerebral palsy. And he is quadriplegic and nonverbal. And Neil Young had spent the year before making this record in an intensive program of treatment for his son. Like, him and his wife were basically learning how to take care of Ben. Mm-hmm. And he slowed down working. I think he took a year off from making music. There wasn't anything he needed to. Him and his wife needed to learn how to take care of their son, because he had a lot of needs.
Yeah.
And one of the things Neil did was he was always into model trains, and he had this huge train set in their house that he rewired and modified so that his son could control it. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the places where Transformer Man came from.
Yeah.
Transformer Man is his son Ben.
Right.
Along with that, Neil Young was trying to find ways to communicate with his son, because he was nonverbal. Mm-hmm. And couldn't understand what they were saying, and they were having a hard time understanding what he wanted. He was also a baby, so between having, cerebral palsy and being a baby, it was very hard for them to ascertain his needs, and it was a struggle, and it really was stressful.
I bet.
So the synthesizers and the vocoders came about with Neil Young messing around with them, and apparently his son Ben responded to hearing those sounds. Like he responded to hearing the words being spoken through a vocoder and robotic synthesizer stuff. So that was where again, there's not a lot of information about this. If you look up the making of trance, you don't find it. You find a lot of articles about the record. You find a lot of reviews from now looking back on it and seeing it for the work of art that it really is and the sort of weird genius that it is. But Neil Young has really never talked about it, besides many years later telling just this bare bones story about where the record came out. But that's really it. What else was going on? It was that Neil had just signed to the brand new Geffen Records. And he was going to be one of their flagship artists because he was just huge. So Geffen was expecting this crazy, awesome, classic Neil Young record. And he recorded 2 records around the same time in Hawaii with Crazy Horse. Islands in the Sun was one of the records, and the other record, I'm not sure if it had a name, but it was the songs that made up trance, the more electronic songs. He had submitted Islands in the Sun to Geffen, and they rejected it. They said, this is terrible. This is terrible. So, along with that, the songs that became trance, he re-recorded a lot of the Crazy Horse instrumentation and replaced it with synthesizers, replaced it with a vocoder and a synclavier synthesizer. But what is interesting about the record is that a lot of times it's described as, oh, this is Neil Young's electronic record, or it's his like synth pop record, or it's an entirely synthesizer record. It's not. There's a lot of standard classic instrumentation on it, and Crazy Horse is the backing band. They play these instruments. Like, the guitars are the Crazy Horse. It's, Nils Lofgren is on the record. He's playing the guitars. I think the bass player, the guitar player plays a lot of the synthesizers. Neil plays a lot of the synthesizers. And when you listen to it, you do hear Crazy Horse. I mean, you hear this, they were like a really rough sounding, thudding band, and you hear their instruments, and you hear them underneath this weird synthetic bones that was some of it was replaced with. Like, some of the drums are replaced with drum machine, some aren't. There's some original guitars on it. There's some synthesizers. It's a really odd mashup of very unproduced. Some of it is quite bad sounding.
Yeah, well, and that, I think that had some of that has to do with the time period. Recording technology in the 80s. I mean, there was definitely a lot, like a strong, like, production presence going on in that decade, where I think that a lot of his recordings and everyone's recordings in the 80s kind of fell subject to that and ended up just sounding like an 80s record. It's just kind of hard to avoid.
Right. Neil Young has said that this is his favorite record of his, but he says if there's anything wrong with it, it's probably in the mixing. It's probably a bad mix. He said that they had a lot of technical difficulties and equipment failures as they were trying to mix the record.
Right.
And I would agree. When you listen to the record, it's like maddening how good it has the potential to be. And some of the songs are just absolutely gorgeous. Like Transformer Man is a beautiful song. Computer Age is a beautiful song. We Are in Control and Sample and Hold are like disco grunge. They're really great sounding. Yeah. But the mix and the feel of it is really cold. I feel like it almost seems like in the hands of a producer outside of them, someone could have probably really polished this record up into something that didn't sound in some ways sort of slapdash and in other ways just wrong. Like the more acoustic and country flavored songs sound completely out of place. And they're okay. The opening song isn't a terrible Neil Young song, but it's kind of, grade C Neil Young stuff.
Right.
It's really only as the record progresses that you hear how much he's diving into the synthesizer technology.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that completely. I mean, I've been listening to this now for quite a few days, and listening to it a lot, and it's very interesting music. It's definitely not what I thought it was gonna be,
Mm-hmm.
and especially after doing some of the research and kind of like getting more familiar with kind of the background and kind of like, you know, what prompted this record to happen, because it's such a departure for him, really.
It is, and it's not so much of a surprise if you really are a fan of Neil Young's and sort of see his arc of albums, because he always wanted to defy expectations. Like, he was bored with the commercial success that Harvest had, so he went in a different direction. He was bored with the attention that, you know, after the gold rush and that really country folk and piano balladry got him, so he went harder rock. And then in the later 70s, he has, you know, records that are very fuzzed out, like Rust Never Sleeps. He experiments with just pummeling guitar tones and fuzz tones that are like some of the most unlistenable guitar tones you ever heard. Super loud volume, super ultra distorted guitars. So he was always a fan of doing what he wanted and defying what people were expecting of him at any time. And the record before this, Reactor, sort of was heading in this direction, but it's kind of an unremarkable record. It doesn't have the story that this record has, and it doesn't really dive into the electronics and synthesized elements as much as this record does. And then Neil didn't really do it again after this. I think that if he had, you know, maybe done a sequel to Trans afterwards, or really sort of followed this type of music, he would have, I think there would have been some really cool ideas. Not that Trans in itself isn't awesome. It's like maddeningly frustrating to listen to, because I feel like it has this potential that it never quite gets to. You know, it kind of just it doesn't quite. But it is amazing. And Transformer Man is a beautiful song. Mm-hmm. And as much as people, you know, talk about how the vocoder renders Neil's voice, you know, it's not, you know, the beautiful Neil Young voice. Transformer Man, it's almost the vocoder acts as, you know, a way to almost purely distill his angelic falsetto into like this robotic, angelic sci-fi. It almost works. I think it's perfect. It's the perfect effect for Neil Young's voice if he was going to do something wild, is to run it through a vocoder and have it be that sort of pure tone that he sings in that song. And then the other songs, when his voice is like distorted out of recognition, it's also like, it's just incredible to listen to. The timbre and the tone and the feel of it's just so like dirty. You know, it's very grungy, and I think that is has a lot to do with the fact that the backing band is Crazy Horse. You know, so it's not that weird of a record. It's Crazy Horse, and then Neil replaces some of it with synthesizers and drum machines. Yeah. But a lot of it is still there.
I think it was a confrontation to his audience, because it was just such a departure from what everyone was used to. Everyone, and even, you know, because he's such an amazing artist that always challenged himself with basically almost every album. I mean, you know, I think there's a slow progression, but there are definitely progressions throughout his career. And at the time, this one, you know, 1982, diving into the new technology, and that was, I think, a really divisive characteristic and thing to kind of incorporate to his audience.
Yeah.
Because people just saw it as like, oh no, he's going the 80s, he's going the synth route now because everyone's using the synth. You know.
And that's not, and you hear that take a lot when you read about this record, when people haven't really learned a lot about it.
Right.
But like I was saying earlier, it's really not a synth pop record.
Right.
And
he's shrouded in mystery. So
yeah,
that's the other
and
thing
he didn't
about
talk
this
about
record.
it at the time. So
Right.
the only clues at the time was that he made a movie called Human Highway that Devo is in. He befriended Devo, and he got he was listening to Kraftwerk, and that was one of the main inspirations for the sound. That's what introduced him into synths and vocoder stuff. Was discovering Devo and really getting into the weirdo art freak stuff that they were doing, which was really weird at the time.
Yeah.
Super weird.
I caught a video of them doing that somewhere.
Yeah.
Somebody posted it on Facebook. I can't remember who did it.
Yep, you see that video every once in a while, and that's from that era.
Yeah.
That video is probably from before he made Trans, but it might also be from when he was touring with Trans, which he did. He took the record on tour and did some of this stuff live. And Nils Lofgren is on that tour as his guitar player, and then the very next year he was Bruce Springsteen's guitar player for Born in the USA, that tour. So this record, the people that play on this record are, classic rock guys. It's Crazy Horse. It's like the most, rock dudes that Neil Young ever played with.
So I want to kind of get into this record a little bit. Now, when you approached me with it, after listening to your new EP, All My Psychic Children, it almost seemed to click like immediately. Like I was just like, oh, okay. Like I've heard the other bands that you've been part of, but this release that you put out just recently, All My Psychic Children, seems very akin to this. And like after I listened to it, after you told me about this record, I was just like, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, this makes sense. This actually seems like it's a very good and close connection, and probably one of the most accurate choices by a guest as far as just hey, this is one of the records that really kind of influenced me, because you've always dabbled, I feel in all the bands that I've seen you perform with, in a little bit of electronica in those elements, in those Brit pops, in that not pop punk. What is that? I guess I'll just call it pop for now, just to symbolize it. But there always is some kind of digital element, some electronic element in there.
Yeah, one of my older bands, when we were doing the Fantastics and Jagalinzer, we were really into British bands that crossed over into dance, and we were also DJing. And me and my band, that Fantastic, we became house music DJs at the same time, because we got turntables, we dove into techno and house music and deep house. We loved all that stuff, and we were listening to Stone Roses and Happy Mondays, Primal Scream and Screamadelica, and yeah, for a lot of years, I just loved all that stuff, and still do. And that band, we definitely were trying to. That's probably around when I first met you and saw you guys.
I think so. Yeah.
We were definitely trying to incorporate the dance music stuff, because we loved that. We wanted to. We had kind of gotten bored with being just a guitar band, but we wanted to have beats, and we wanted to get into the dancier side of it. So there was an element of that. We definitely were trying. And again, nobody around here wanted to hear that. Nobody wanted to hear a rock band with guitars that had a house beat under a couple of their songs.
You were ahead of your time.
We were ahead of time here, but we were also 10 years behind what was going on in England. We were very influenced by stuff that was 10 years old at that point, but that was fun,
Yeah, for sure. Also, your singing style, very similar to Neil Young.
It's really funny. I mean, I didn't think about that at all while I was recording this little EP. I didn't think at any point that I sounded like Neil Young.
Well, I think it's just your natural singing voice.
But it's weird. It's weird that I didn't think that, because when I was younger and playing Neil Young songs on the guitar, I heard that all the time, and I think I had just kind of forgotten that
Yeah.
I think I had forgotten how much I was influenced by Neil Young.
Well, and you haven't always been the lead. Like in all the bands that you've been part of since you moved here to Providence, like you haven't always been the front man.
Not always, yeah. The first couple I was, when in the Fantastics and Jaglin's, where I was the singer. Then when we did the Cold War, Miguel, who had been the singer for the LEVs, was the singer in that band. When I was in the Americans, I just was doing background stuff. I was playing bass with them. It wasn't until we started Sweet Dreams a few years ago that I started singing again and writing songs and being like, the vocalist for the band again. And I think I had just forgotten that I was influenced by Neil Young. It really wasn't until I was done with that EP and put it out and just sent it to all my friends to listen to that I started hearing like, oh, you really sound like Neil Young. It sounds like Neil Young. And I was like, shit.
I think it sounds like you. I just think that you happen to sing in that range.
Right. I don't think I definitely wasn't trying to consciously ape his vocal style, but I think that just the fact that that's how I learned to play music, it all came back.
Right.
Like, I can't shake that. I can't sing differently. I'm too old to sing a different way than I sing now.
Well, I mean, it's comfortable for you, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's your natural voice, you know? I mean, just like Neil Young himself. I mean, that's the way he sings.
Yeah,
you know?
I think so. I just wasn't thinking about that.
I think if you got comments from friends that were listening to the record and mentioning that to you, it's just a common reaction as a music listener, you know, is that you kind of always want to, you know, find out or at least pinpoint, what does this remind me of? What is this most similar to? And so I think that it was, it's just kind of natural progression for everyone to say, like, oh, yeah, it's kind of Neil Young-y.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it. I mean, obviously, I'm incredibly flattered. If someone hears me singing on my record and they brings to mind Neil Young, that I am flattered beyond belief. I don't think I'm really deserving of that kind of a comparison at all. But I'm, obviously very flattered and humbled by that. So,
yeah. Okay. So let's get into this. Let's just say, first of all, thank you to Kevin Levitt for letting us borrow the vinyl copy of this record, which I've already shown off a little bit. I was telling you because you were kind of curious what it meant, this whole QX2 thing. This is basically like an audiophile pressing.
Okay, cool. I've never seen that sticker. I'm sure Kevin's an audiophile dude. I'm sure he knows exactly what that means.
He must have done this on purpose, yeah. I hope he found like it for a good deal, but I'm imagining that this is actually very valuable. It's in really great condition. I mean, minus a little bit of splitting on the sleeve and stuff like that.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah, I mean, just because these audiophile copies, these QX2 versions, like they typically, because not every record got pressed like that. You know, it was just like a limited thing.
Yeah, like he's a record collector. He probably has a lot of records with that. I would imagine, but he knows a lot more about that than me. But I've never seen that.
There's half-speed masters and stuff like that too. The first song, Little Thing Called Love, is a little bit of a kind of a throwaway song. It's not a great Neil Young song in general, but it's most similar to what his public knew him as. So let's listen to a little bit of that.
This is one of the songs that was on Islands in the Sun, the record that was rejected by Geffen. And he took 3 songs from that and put it on this record.
Let me just try to get it to the chorus. Let me see, where is it? Here it is.
So there's a little guitar thing in the back there that he reuses for Harvest Moon.
You know about that, okay?
Yeah. So there's a little, and so he recycles that little A walk up, and he throws it into Harvest Moon. What came out early '90s.
Yeah, I immediately picked up on it because I specifically remember Harvest Moon. I remember watching his documentary Heart of Gold, that live concert video.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing that Harvest Moon in that performance and really loving that song.
Great song.
I wasn't familiar with the record very much, Harvest Moon, the album. But I immediately picked up on that. I was just like, that's great. Like how he would kind of, after doing the research, realizing, oh, okay, this whole album was almost and essentially a throwaway, and how he's kind of, on a couple of occasions throughout this record, and I'm sure we're going to pick them out, it seems like he kind of either reuses or reworks like previous compositions.
Yeah, and I think that I think that it's obvious that he is one of those artists that definitely recycled ideas. I think that it was I read something from that Tom Waits once said. It's like if he had ideas that didn't work, he would just recycle them. He called it cutting bait, and it was just basically ideas that never worked, just chopping them up and completely reworking them to try to get them to work. And I think it's obvious that Neil Young, and I'm sure so many other artists, have old things that they try to drag out to sort of find new life with them. And it sounds like he at least took that one little part. It's not a terrible song.
No,
it's just,
that's all right.
It's a kind of a bland Neil Young song. If the whole record sounded like that, it would just be kind of a bland.
Yeah. It would kind of be a little boring. So this song is called A Little Thing Called Love. A little bit of the lyrics from this says, wait a minute now, honey, don't be sad. This may be the best love you ever had. But that don't mean that you had enough. Followed by the chorus, which is, only love puts a tear in your eye. Only love makes you hypnotize. Only love makes you choose. Only love brings you the blues. So with this being said, my question for you is, what was the saddest you've ever been for a happy moment, or the happiest you've been for a sad moment?
Oh God, I have no idea. Oh man, I don't know. I don't know if my brain works that way. I have a hard time recalling things when I'm asked pointedly.
Yeah. Okay.
But 2 weeks from now, something will pop into my head, and I'll text you.
Okay, might be a little too late by then, but so I mean, you don't experience that like sometimes that overwhelming happiness where you sometimes find yourself like crying even?
Oh yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely know how that feels.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky. I have an amazing girlfriend, and we have a great house, and I've got great friends, and I find myself, as often as possible, reflecting on how fortunate I am, and how much I really do have, and where there's a lot of people who I both know and don't know who are suffering, especially this past year.
That's true.
I'm very fortunate to be good this whole year, and I have friends and family and who were not as good, and it's hard, but a lot of times when I do think about how good I have it, sometimes it's usually when I'm like in my head complaining about something or kind of being a whiner about something, like some minor inconvenience. I really try to force myself to stop and think about how fortunate I am and how I have a bunch of amazing people in my life, and I get to do really cool things, and I just try to remind myself how lucky I am. And sometimes that can be, very emotional. Depends on how many beers I've had.
Yeah, for sure. I've always been the crying your beer type. And music always does it for me too. Music is actually, I think for me personally, I wasn't intending on getting into this myself, but I think for me, music is oddly enough the thing that kind of usually does that for me, because sometimes in some songs, and I don't think any of the songs on this record are a good example of that, but I know that there are some songs that I can listen to, and even if it's a happy song, it triggers an overwhelming like emotional response in me to it. Like what's a good example of a happier song that fucks me up? Shit, I don't know if I can think of one right now, but sometimes, man, there's just like these choruses that just kind of sneak up out of nowhere and just fucking floor me.
Yeah, I find I'm not a huge lyric person. I'm in awe of people that can write really great lyrics, and obviously I love great lyrics and songs, but for me it's more about the music.
Yeah.
There's a lot of most of my favorite songs or albums, I don't know what the lyrics mean, and I don't care.
Right.
For me, it's about the music. The music is what can bring me to tears sometimes. Hearing how beautiful an artist can craft something, or just the sound of their voice and how they're singing. Not so much the lyrics.
Yeah, I agree with you.
For me, I find myself getting caught by like musical moments.
Yeah.
More, and it's very hard for me to write lyrics. I am not a lyric writer. It's painful for me. Like I will write a rough draft of lyrics and then never change it until I have to record it. And then I'm forcing myself to write lyrics, and sometimes they're good. Most of the time they're not. I'm not a natural lyric writer. I never have been. Trying to tell a story with songs, I am just not good at it.
It sounds like maybe you should incorporate the synth claver.
Yeah, I think I should probably just run everything through, and then nobody can know what I'm singing.
Some kind of vocoder, just fuck your voice all up. Just make it the instrument, seriously. All right, well, let's move on to the next song, Computer Age. Now we get to dive into the actual electronic element of this record.
And this is where you really hear what this record's going to do. God, I love that. That sound right here.
That's where...
that's the shit.
First of all, at the very end of the chorus is when it really... you see the full spectrum of like the way that he uses that synth flavor and like how he can hit that high note, and going into the next verse, you hear a little bit of the influence of this of the Kraftwerk that they were getting into at the time.
Yeah, this is one of the tracks that I have to assume, and again, it's hard to find the deep details about the making of this record.
I have the Neil Young Bible, which I am referring to this evening.
So to me, this song sounds like one of the tracks where he replaced a lot of stuff. There's some guitar in there, but that's an electronic drum beat. That's a synthesized bass line possibly. But this song, more than some of the other, it seems like it was almost completely replaced with synthesizers.
Yeah. So let's see, Computer Age, according to Shaky, the Neil Young's biography, which I'm going to refer to as Neil Young's Bible this evening. This is my only reference for tonight. I only use this as a reference, basically.
I didn't get a chance to read this book. I've always wanted to read this book, and I never have. So
I haven't read it either. Okay. I've only read this, the majority of the sections based on the album Trans, like this era in 1982, and a little bit prior to that, kind of leading up to it. So let's see, what he says here about Computer Age is, when we got the vocoder, we started listening to Kraftwerk, said Briggs. All this would plunge Young in his weirdest direction yet, what would eventually become Trans. Even a version of Mr. Soul, complete with backward guitar, got the machine treatment. And the further Young got into the new music, the less company he took with him. Trans started like we do always, 2 guitars, bass, drums, said Poncho. Next thing we know, Neil stripped all our music off, overdubbed all this stuff, the vocoder, weird sequencing, and put the synth shit on it. Briggs felt no one around Young tried to understand. Billy and Ralph and Poncho, all the other participants, they dismissed it. They played on the stuff, but they didn't think it was music.
And these are a bunch of old. I mean, at this point, Neil Young's getting a little older, and his bandmates. Some of these guys are older than him, so you gotta really. I mean, to be a fly on the wall, to see some of these crotchety old California rockers who have never listened to any of this kind of music before and are much more traditionalists. Yeah. To hear this for the first time or to hear what Neil's doing, they got to be like, what the fuck is he doing?
Oh, yeah. And they're very graphic about that in this book, the way that they pull these quotes out of these guys where they're just like, they're very matter of fact. And you can just tell that they're like no nonsense, and they're like, this was the fucking stupidest thing ever. Like they have no shame, and it's really a great read.
I will read this. I will finish this eventually. I've had this for years and I've never fucking got through it.
I've been meaning to get this book forever. So
all right. So now, Computer Age. What would you say would be one unlikely influence for you?
For me,
like an influence that you don't think anyone would know that you were influenced by.
I don't know. That's hard to say. I think that what surprises most of my friends now, because I didn't know them as much back then, but knowing that I used to be a house DJ and to be into electronic dance music, and I had 2 turntables and a crate full of dance records, and we would do parties. My band, the Fantastics, we also would DJ parties. So we would sometimes play a show, but then we'd sometimes just the 5 of us would DJ.
Just party and spin records.
And I think that whenever I remind my friends that I used to do that, they're like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, you used to be a techno DJ?" I was like, "Well, I wasn't a very good one." And we were more into, deep house and stuff that was a little more funk and electro, stuff like that. So there really wasn't anybody around here that wanted to hear the kind of records that we were playing. We were reading British DJ magazines, like Mix Mag, and really listening to what I think was really cool shit. But around here, the dance music scene was more about that rave.
Drum and bass stuff.
Yes, a lot of drum and bass. In those years, drum and bass had just
And what you were doing was what, more trip hop-ish?
We were doing more deep house, probably more funkier deep house, electro, stuff that was a little more maybe jazz or whatever. But it was pretty eclectic. But it wasn't ravey. It wasn't techno. It wasn't that real druggy late night rave techno, because we weren't really into that either. We were a bunch of dudes who drank beer and played guitars. We just liked British dance music, British club music and dance music. So I think that, I think about those kind of rhythms now when I'm writing, and especially the new stuff that I'm working on now. I'm using a lot of classic drum machines. I'm using an 808 and a Lindrum.
Oh, nice.
And
808,
so I'm really, there's this bubbling sort of rhythmic, analog, round, warm feel to some of the stuff that I'm doing, but laying acoustic guitars and me singing over top of it. And I think that, it'll be a little more evident the next record that I'm going to put out. It's going to have more elements of that in it. But again, whenever I remind my friends or my girlfriend that I, used to be a DJ in clubs and stuff, they were like, "I can't believe you used to fucking do that." And they're not really into that kind of music. They're like, "Fucking techno, really? That shit?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "No, really. There was some cool stuff, man. There really was cool stuff."
No, I'm sure of it. Yeah, I mean, you gotta be like Neil Young, man. You have to be willing to explore and experiment.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. With that being said, let's move on into We Are in Control.
So this is where the record really dives into the Devo sounding sound, and this lyrically, this song is kind of very prescient. I mean, it almost predicts a sort of neuromancer idea of society and government being controlled by automated computer networks.
Let's hear it.
Yeah, it's great. It kind of reminds me of The Wall a little bit. Maybe the rhythm of it, maybe the kind of apocalyptic kind of feel to it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a million miles away as far as the theme of a somewhat dystopian or at least post-war society that's kind of slowly having its humanity sucked out of it.
Right.
I think that what Neil is trying to thread here is that a sort of balancing between a song like this, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, like the computers are taking over.
Right.
But also like accepting that is, possibly how we're going to achieve harmony, and maybe also a way to control some of the problems in that society has, or the environment, or maybe looking at technology as a hopeful solution to some of the problems that we haven't been able to fix.
Yeah, it's clear on this record that obviously he was accepting to the technology. He actually was one of the first people to ever buy this type of technology to make this record. Like, he spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars on like the very first like kind of digital recording systems, and then obviously the synthclaver and the vocoders that he used on these. And the technology at the time wasn't great. And from what I learned from the book is that when they tried to take it on tour, they ended up so far in debt. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and mention this now. The Trans tour, that in addition to buying all of that gear and spending all of that money on it, they embarked on a European tour to promote the record. They never toured this album in the U.S., minus like the tail end of the tour, and it was like a couple of weird dates where he just kind of like did a couple of like acoustic renditions of these songs.
I wasn't sure if he did a U.S. tour.
No, he was basically trying to stay out of the U.S. before this and then for this album. Like, I think it was like the Reactor. Basically, as soon as he like signed to Geffen, he was just like, I'm not doing any U.S. for now. But so they went on a European tour, and it ended up costing him. Their projected numbers for the tour were upwards of like $2 million, and he ultimately lost $750,000.
Yeah, I think one of the quotes I saw was that he lost $750,000 on that tour, and every show was sold out.
Yes, yeah, and that's the weird thing, right? And like, and everyone was hating it.
And everyone was hating it.
And the band fell apart because the band sucked. Like, I mean, not to say that these guys weren't good players, but they were just like a disaster in this state. Like, they were all drinking too much. They were all drugging too much. They didn't love the music, and so maybe that had some effect on them. Like, where they just kind of felt a little apathetic, and therefore maybe kind of dove into the drinking a little bit more than they normally would. But they were not feeling it. So, and then of course the gear would sometimes fail.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
nightmare.
It was the worst possible scenario that they could have ever.
Yeah, a bunch of angry guys who are definitely like coming out of being alcoholics for most of the 70s and recovering from the excesses of the 70s, some better than others, some not at all.
Yeah.
And and add on to that Neil Young getting increasingly angrier and angrier, and his incredibly stressful home situation with his son, and learning how to learning a whole new life. You can just imagine the mental. I can't imagine the mental and psychological toll that had to take on him, the people that were working for him, the people that had to be around him. I'm sure Neil Young is a cool dude, but I can also imagine him being the biggest asshole in the world.
He loses his cool eventually. Yeah, it comes out. So as you were stating about this song, it's very tongue-in-cheek. It's very much like, the way that it's written seems like a pretty straightforward depiction of like, automation control taking over a little bit. So do you feel we will lose control to automation, Matrix style? Do you think the machines will win eventually?
I don't know. I think about that a lot. It is pretty crazy how much we're handing over to, especially when it comes to privacy. And I think that that's something that maybe people couldn't imagine when they thought about future technology in the 70s and 80s, is that social media was something that was largely unimagined. You don't see a lot of people predicting that. You see the prediction of the internet and like a network like in Neuromancer, but the idea of social media and it being so all-encompassing, it's not until that happened that people had any idea that could be something that existed. And now thinking that we're giving up so much privacy, and the balance between whether that's a good thing or not, it's definitely something I think about. but I don't know how to feel about that. I don't think that I'm quite smart enough to know whether we're headed for a problem or whether technology can be the solution to a lot of our problems.
Right.
I think it just depends on who's in control of it and who's in charge of wielding it.
All right.
You know?
Well, here's the real bad question. What about AI?
It's insane to think about that because it just seems like every year, it gets crazier with these like deep fake videos that you see that are almost to the point where they're so convincingly good. I mean, I think almost is probably even being naive. They're at the point where some of these deep fake videos would probably fool me.
Yeah.
If you showed me a video that was the most cutting edge technology of deep fake of some recognizable famous person or politician saying something and it wasn't real, it was completely, fabricated, to the extent of how good that technology is, it would probably fool me.
What about machines though that are being sentient and that are like free thinking? I can't remember the name of the machine of the android that they had built, but that it's got AI technology, and so not only does it look like a human and they've created the features of the face, but you can ask it anything and in real time it'll answer you back in its own personal responses,
It's so crazy and bizarre. But again, I think that could be, depending on who wields that technology.
Yeah, but it's already created. It's now a free thinking, sentient thing. So how much time?
We're doomed.
So
we're probably doomed.
How much time before that thing says, "Oh, I know how to build my own body now. So now I'm going to create my arms, and now I'm going to help. I'll find some way to build myself up further, develop my army, and kill all of these things."
I thought this was going to be like a fun podcast to be on.
No, it is fun. I mean, I don't give a shit. We're doing fine.
I'm starting to really freak out.
Oh, there's only one so far. I think there's only one so far.
Yeah, no, I do know what you're talking about. Yeah. It's scary. It's scary as shit. It's scary as shit. To know that, in our lifetime, we're going to see some crazy shit. We've already seen some crazy shit, but we're going to see walking, talking androids that are convincingly human. And the first time I see that, I'm going to lose my shit.
And we're going to want to have sex with these things.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
That's good. And then we're going to be...
That's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, we're going to end up in the bedroom and be like, oh, no, wait, you're what?
Everything new that gets invented, someone wants to fuck it. I mean...
Yeah, that's true. I think that's the purpose that they've created them, really, right? Isn't that...
And if that helps some people to...
enjoy pleasure?
Enjoy life, and if it's something that is beneficial to people who need that therapeutically or just need that fulfilled in their life, then great. Again, I think it all comes down to how the technology is wielded and whether it's used for good or for bad. And it'll almost always be used for money-making purposes.
Oh, absolutely.
And whether it's and I think that what'll obviously happen is that it'll be both. It's already that kind of already is happening now, and there's no reason to believe that it's not just going to sort of stay that way. People will use technology for good, and people will use it for bad, and it's going to happen at the same time. And you can focus on both, or one or the other, and
Right. I guess it depends on how you want to participate in it. Really, do you want to participate in the capitalism of it, or do you want to participate in the activism of it?
Exactly. Or do you just want to fuck it? I mean...
Or just fuck it. I mean, that's the easier way to go about it.
Fuck it. But, that's your choice.
Do you want to fuck it, or do you want it to fuck you?
You either fuck or get fucked. Yeah.
Yes. That's what it synthesizes down to for us all the time, in all circumstances, really. All right, let's move on to...
oh, thank God.
Transformer Man.
It's just beautiful. This is like... I think that this song was 100% what he was going for. And what he 100% wanted this to sound like.
All right, let's take a listen to it.
Oh man, that's beautiful.
This record, this song is beautiful musically. The lyrics are beautiful. This song is about his son Ben. Ben is the Transformer man,
Right.
and it is just a really touching love song to his son, and how much his son means to him, and how much,
And his struggle with
yeah,
learning how to. I don't want to say socialize with his son, but to communicate with him and to essentially just be with him.
yeah. The lyric, unlock the secrets, let us throw off the chains that hold you down. And it's got to be Neil trying to, find a way for his son to live the most normal and typical life for a person free of his, his disability and the pain and discomfort that must go along with that.
Oh, yeah.
It's just incredibly touching. It's an incredibly beautiful love song to someone's child.
Yeah. So you're already like touching on everything that I'm basically supposed to be saying. I was thinking about this song, and for my notes for this song was basically that I said I think the song is the epitome of the album. Even how I was joking with like the first song, the little thing called Love, and even in Computer Age, where there's themes of like, this love that he's singing about.
Mm-hmm.
I think realistically he's singing about his son. Love, the way that he sings about it, pertains to the love for his child more so than the love for a lover. I think throughout this album.
I think so too. I think that, this record can be thought of as being lyrically cold and sort of calculating, or at the very least envisioning a soulless future. But this song really does, more so than the two other songs that both have love in the title, this song really does get to the heart of, I think, that what he was trying to deal with. And I think it's impossible to not be touched by these lyrics, whether you are adhering to what they're about, a father's love for his son, or whether it's how you feel about someone in your life that you love. I mean, every morning when I look in your eyes, I feel electrified by you. And that is, such a great lyric. And I think that I would, everyone at some point in their life would hope to feel that way about someone or others.
I think that lyric specifically, because that one really hits me. I have a child with a disability, and I feel like I understand the struggle. I mean, my struggle isn't as nearly as drastic as Neil Young's with his son Ben, but it definitely affects me. And I think I've been thinking about it constantly since I've been reading about this album and this song. It's really fucking frustrating. And
the more that I learned, about this record, it made me, I understand that. I work with, my day job is I work with folks with developmental disabilities, and over the years I've worked with a lot of folks who are nonverbal and were not able to express what they're feeling and what they want and what they're thinking and whether they're hungry, whether they're in pain. And, it's hard as their staff to just want to help them. I can only imagine what it must feel like as a parent of someone with developmental disabilities, or you want so much to fix everything. And, learning about how this was Neil Young's way to communicate with his son through this weird sounding technology, I think it's incredible. And it really makes me think about aspects of my work where I've struggled to communicate with folks that I've been trying to care for. It can be very hard.
I don't know, with you working in that environment, like, you don't have any children, right?
I don't.
Yeah. But so I don't know. I don't really have a question for you, because I don't really want to go into it, because it's actually probably going to be a little rough for me.
Where I work And the two companies that I've worked for that work with these individuals have always been art and music based.
Oh, okay.
And what has been incredible is to be able to reach some of these folks who nobody has been able to reach them any other way except through music and art.
Yeah.
I used to work at RHT up in Pawtucket for many years. And now I work for a company called Avatar, and we're very much art and music and emotions based. I don't know
Therapy?
what it's called. Therapy, I guess. I'm not a therapist, but what we but like
I mean, it's a therapy, like kind of like physical therapy, you know.
We've been able to reach and you know, try to teach some of our folks so much more about life through music and art. And being in bands with these folks and writing music with them, it's kind of what we do.
Yeah.
In so many instances, not just with folks who are nonverbal, but of all across the spectrum of folks who have the developmental disabilities that we work with, music and art is what almost never fails to reach them. You know, getting them to think about music and getting them to perform and to write and to sing or to play or to bang on a drum or to bang on a guitar.
Yeah.
There's almost nothing that reaches them like that. You know, it cuts through everything. It cuts through so much of the difficulties that they have connecting to society around them, especially folks with autism. And I've had the privilege of working with a bunch of folks who are autistic, and you know what the way to reach them and the way to communicate them is almost always music and movies they love and comic books and art. That is, you know, art and music cuts through everything, I think. And learning more about how this record was made, it means a lot to me.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. I mean, it's very. I appreciate and thank you for your work. I think that what you do is exceptional.
Well, there's there's a lot of people that do this work, and it can be hard, and I work with a lot of great people, and I've learned a lot from them over the years. You know, people have been doing it for a lot longer than I have, and you know, it can be tough, but I work for some great people, and yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. Let's move on to Computer Cowboy.
This is a funny one.
Dirty riff.
It really is. It's like disco grunge, you know? It's so cool. You can definitely tell that as much as you know, the Crazy Horse guys feel like they were erased from this record, like there's that stuff on there, you know? The stuff is on there.
I mean, I think it was that one song specifically
that he had kind of like overdubbed the band, or you know, reworked it so that they were kind of out of it. But no, they're definitely there, and in this song in particular, I think that this is probably the strongest representation of the band at their best, and their dirtiest and rockingest. So not much to say about it, because you know, as you have already mentioned, kind of, it's a very cut and dry depiction of what seems to be essentially a real Android cowboy thing, some kind of new technology thing. This idea of these massive computing programming things that are still incorporated into things such as farming. There's got to be some person, some team, you know, the computer types that delve into this work long hours and kind of sit behind a computer screen for hours at a time. Bear with me, this might be a little strange, but considering somebody that works on a computer that much, and that essentially I think is the computer cowboy, in theory, of as far as this song is concerned. With your interest in UFOs, how much of a computer cowboy are you?
I'm really bad at computers. I know like the bare minimum of
But you
computers.
use it for your research, I'm presuming.
I do, and I have, but really only for research purposes. When I was working for an organization and doing actual UFO investigations, really it was just interviewing the person one-on-one or over the phone.
Mm-hmm.
But there were aspects of using technology to sort of investigate a case. Like there is sky watching apps that you can, let's say, and I did this a handful of times. Let's say someone saw something in the sky that they couldn't identify, and they knew exactly about what time and the date. There's any sky watching app, you can sort of scroll back to that date, that time, point your phone at the sky, and it will show you exactly what was in the sky at that time.
What?
And I was able to debunk or at least, disprove a lot of UFO, maybe not a lot, a few, by using an app like that. Just because I was able to say, no, you were seeing Venus, or you were seeing
Sky
a
phenomenon.
comet, or you were seeing a satellite.
Okay.
Satellites are all tracked in these apps too. So there was at least 2 different cases that I had worked on that I really think that the witnesses had seen a satellite moving. Satellites are very tiny pricks of light in the sky that move pretty fast, and they can be weird looking if you're looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain can tell that that's too high up to be a plane.
Right.
But if you don't know that you're able to see satellites, especially on like a really... I didn't know that when I was younger, or up until, when I learned about this, like, I didn't realize that you could occasionally see satellites. I just figured they were too small and too far away.
Okay.
But if you're somewhere where it's dark enough and the satellite is bright enough, you can see it. You can also see old like rocket wreckage, which is all tracked by these apps. And one of the cases I had worked on a bunch of years ago, I was pretty confident in identifying it as what they were seeing is like the fuselage of an old Russian satellite rocket delivery rocket.
Okay.
So all of this space junk is tracked by...
Yeah, and there's lots of it.
And there's lots of it. And there's a scary amount of space junk right now.
In our orbit.
There is a scary amount. And
It's like
if
that...
you ever want to scare yourself, read about how much... There's going to be a point in the next 5, 10, 20 years where we have to do something about it, because it's going to be a danger to anything that we launch.
Right.
Or...
Yeah, because even now they have like the trajectory that they have to calculate
for
anything to exit our stratosphere into space has to dodge all of this fucking debris that's floating around.
Yeah, there's a scary amount of space junk up there, and it's going to have to be dealt with someday.
It's funny. I didn't know anything about the satellites either until just this past summer, before COVID. I guess it was last summer. I was trying to utilize the free observation tower at CCRI.
Yeah.
With Brendan Britton.
Yep, Brendan. Yep.
Brendan Britton is the professor over there, and so he was hosting these free sessions at the observatory.
Was it at Frosty Drew, or was it at...
It was at CCRI.
CCRI, yeah.
Yeah. And so I was taking the kids there, and it's a great thing to do for an hour. And we saw a satellite one night when we were there, and he pointed it out to us. He was just like, "Whoa, look at this thing!" It's like, kind of whizzing by, And,
they move fast.
Yeah,
is the thing, and I think that people when they see that, because a lot of people don't realize you can see satellites. It's moving so fast that they're like, "What the hell is that?" You know? So it can be a weird thing to see.
Yeah.
Because you're not expecting that.
No. I had no idea. I mean, it just happened to be that night we were out there, and luckily, Brendan was there to kind of, pinpoint it for us and just let us know what it was.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah, he's great. Absolutely. So have you had any encounters with UFOs?
No, I don't. There was only one time that me and my roommate, Bill, who was in a bunch of my bands back then, we thought we saw a UFO. We lived on the east side. We lived on Armstrong Street down by Wickenden Street. And out our window, we saw this light, like just a pinpoint of light, but it was darting around the sky. So we went outside and we crossed the footbridge at India Point Park.
Okay.
This is years ago, back when it was like the tiny little footbridge. Now it's this big like bike path or whatever.
Yeah.
And we went over and stood at the end of it, and there was this light in the sky that just was like literally bouncing from one end of the sky to the other.
Right.
And it was just moving too fast to be anything, and it only lasted for a couple minutes, maybe not even a minute, from when we saw it, went outside, saw it again, and it was just, and then it was gone, and we were like, well, that was fucking weird. But that's the only time, and I don't consider that a UFO sighting. It was a weird thing that I couldn't explain. We didn't know what it was. But
right.
Usually when people ask me if I've ever seen a UFO, I say no, because
you don't know for sure.
I don't know for sure, but also I don't even consider that to be that good a one.
Yeah. Well, so what do you think about the current state of the world as far as the declaration of UFOs being real?
It's pretty crazy. When that story came out in 2017, that was in the Washington Post and the Politico about the fact that it was confirming that the U.S. government had been funding a program that was at least somewhat tracking UFO sightings. I mean, that was a huge confirmation for people who had always suspected and insisted that our government was doing something about UFOs, because for years and years and years, forever, our government and the Air Force and the Navy and the Army were always like, we don't take that shit seriously.
They always deny it, right?
We don't. Prior to this, the Air Force would want you to believe that they don't even keep track of it. They don't even record it.
Yeah.
They just don't take it seriously. And nobody believed that, because there's just the sheer amount of sightings there's just so many people seeing UFOs. If 90% of them are completely made up, which is insane to think that, but if 90% of them are just fabricated by the people that are reporting them, that still leaves thousands of UFO sightings a year. And often by people who are what I would consider credible witnesses. Airline pilots, people who are high-tech military folks, people who are trained to know what they're looking at in the sky. Right. I think that a lot of time there's this sort of a myth or a joke that the only people that see UFOs are country bumpkins on their farm.
Right.
But really, so many UFOs have been reported all over the world, not just in the United States, by generals, Air Force pilots, commercial pilots. I mean, these are people that I trust them to fly a plane when I go on vacation. So if they say that they saw something weird,
yeah,
I'm going to believe these people, because first of all, they almost always lose their job by saying that they saw a UFO. A commercial airline pilot, even now when it's a little more accepted in the last couple years, and it's kind of becoming cool and accepted in society to be someone like an airline pilot,
yeah,
and claim you saw a UFO. But historically, a commercial airline pilot for United Airlines is not going to tell anybody they saw. He's not going to tell their boss they saw a UFO. They fucking get fired. Some Air Force F-16 pilot, some high tech fucking pilot in the Air Force, they're not going to tell their superior officer, they saw a UFO,
Yeah.
you get fucking benched.
Right.
You know? So, like, when these people come forward and say that they've seen this shit, like, I believe them because it's their career. Like, they're committing career suicide by admitting or wanting to talk about stuff like that. So I think that that's kind of fascinating. And I think it's really crazy that we've got this confirmation that our government was funding us, and by funding they were giving basically nothing. Like, I think the budget was like $22 million over the course of 7 years. Like, for our government, that is like, might as well be zero, but it was something.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting stuff. All right. So we have made it to side 2. Let's get into side 2 a little bit.
So side 2 opens up with another acoustic, countryish, folky, classic Neil Young sounding thing, and this was one of the other songs that was going to be on the Rejected
The
record,
Island of
the Sun.
Yeah.
And again, it's a Neil Young acoustic love song.
Well, you know what? I'm going to skip that song.
It's okay. I feel like if people want to listen to it on their own, cool. But yeah, it's not. I don't want to say it's not worth listening because I don't want to be that.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that. It's just that I don't want to. We're running a little bit short on time, and I figure that's a good song to skip because it's just not even a really interesting one.
The only song that's left that really matters on this record, in my opinion, is Sample and Hold.
Okay.
And that is a really long song. First of all, I think it clocks in at like 7 or 8 minutes on the vinyl version. I'm not sure if it's that long on the vinyl. Maybe the digital release, they did like an unedited version. But this is the last song on the record that is heavy electronic synthesizer. And it's got almost like an industrial feel to it. It's almost like he's sort of channeling like 80s Ministry in a way. And
It's 8 minutes and 4 seconds.
Oh yeah, okay. So it's really.
All right. Well, let's put it on for a little bit. I'm bound to catch it, seeing as how long it is.
Whoa, that's weird. Oh, how fucking exciting! This is different than the digital release.
Okay.
I'm not sure how different because we've only just listened to a very small section of this song, but I think I heard about that. About there was a couple of, I guess a couple of songs because I guess it's this one. And then possibly the last song, Like an Inca, that were slightly different mixes. Like, as a matter of fact, I guess Like an Inca was they had shortened it down. They had kind of cut it down.
Yeah, maybe that's the one I'm thinking of that they did. Yeah, it's a shorter version on the record, but
yeah.
Because I know that the version of Sample and Hold that the digital version is like it's a pretty long song.
Yeah, and then like so. Only up until recently when they released the album digitally did they release Like an Inca in its entirety.
In its full, yeah. So I've probably been listening to the full one. Yeah.
Now this looks like a long track on this record. I mean, the vinyl of it. I mean, the last track looks substantial.
For Like an Inca, yeah. So maybe, I'm not sure.
Oh, we're not going to listen to the whole thing, unfortunately, but I'd like to at some point. All right, so Sample and Hold, we just listened to a little bit of it. Kind of cool. So I have it right here in the book in front of me. Sample and Hold, a wry lyric about designing a new mate, is I guess the essence of it was partially inspired by Young's burgeoning work with toy trains. So where's the quote here in the story? Yeah, plunging into all the technical jargon, obviously colored the lyrics of Trentino, which is one of the people he hired to work on his train sets. Recalls work on a digital system for controlling the speed of trains. Quote, we were talking sample and hold. Next thing I knew, there was a song.
I've heard two different explanations for the lyrics. One of them is that it's about a person ordering a robotic sex toy. But
Okay.
the other
Weird.
lyrical explanation is that it's when robots looking for mates, like sentient androids
Okay, I think that's what it.
pre-ordering. So
right.
I've kind of heard it described both ways.
Okay.
They're both terrifyingly weird, and again, kind of like a very tongue-in-cheek and very funny, like, you know.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's funny too. I mean, that's kind of what it says here in the book about that. Just a wry lyric about designing a new mate. But considering it was based, or like, you know, it was informed by the process of, like, you know, building these this toy train set. I have to ask. I already know about one of your obsessions. I feel like the UFO research is one of your obsessions. So what was your favorite toy growing up?
Man, well, I was a kid of the '80s, so definitely, probably Transformers.
That's
come
perfect.
on. I mean, that was my shit. I mean, I loved
The real metal ones.
the real ones.
They were
the first,
fucking legit
the
metal.
first generation, the ones that were like heavy,
Yeah.
like that and G.I. Joe was what me and my friends did. I
Yeah.
loved that whole world, that whole universe. And
So
I
as an
liked-
adult, what do you think you would get back into if you wanted to, or are you dabbling in toys now?
No, I know people who are like still toy collectors. And I
Yeah.
don't think it's anything I can get into.
Like Funkos or those stupid shits?
Yeah, I just don't. I don't get. Like I get it and it's cool. I for a little while when a couple years ago I was collecting fuzz pedals, and that became expensive. So I was just buying like tons of guitar fuzz pedals, like these boutique pedals that were like, you know, $100 each. I had to curb that for a little bit because I was like just ordering too many of them, and I have like a huge crate of them now. But I could get some more. I guess I could get some more. You know?
You can always get more.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm not a big toy or a collector person. I don't really collect records. I love music, but I don't like collect records the way some of my friends do, the way Kevin does. Like, and it's strange that I don't, because I love music, but to me the it's just not something I do. I don't collect books, but I'm a reader. Like I don't. I don't like having a lot of stuff. I guess I don't.
Right.
I'm not a stuff guy, but I am kind of starting to collect like I said, like
Instruments.
guitar pedals, some gear,
Yeah.
stuff like that. If there's anything that I'm probably spending
Well,
too much money
there's a
on
use
now.
in that. See, there's not really a use behind a record or a book. The use is to absorb the information.
Yeah.
And you can absorb the information however you want these days. There's no essential need to own the physical item.
Right. But I do always prefer a book copy than for a while I was getting a lot of Kindle books.
Oh yeah.
And I've read a ton of books on Kindle, but I love lending my books out.
Yeah.
So like to me, I would rather just buy like a cheap paperback of something and then like give it to someone, and then if I never get it back, then cool.
Right.
You can't do that with a Kindle. Like I like to share books, and you know, like the way that my friends like to share records, and so to me, like, not that I collect books, but I'll buy a book just to have it, just to know that I'm going to give it to someone someday.
Okay.
You know?
You like sci-fi?
Yeah, I'm a big sci-fi reader. I have been my whole life, and I've been trying, you know, if there's one thing that I try to collect a lot of, it's like just sort of paperback versions of stuff that I've...
Okay. All right. I might have some stuff for you.
Oh, shit. You like Dune?
No, it's not that I like this stuff. It's just that, you know...
That is...
Well, I think I have some, and I might be able to hand over a couple to you.
Oh, shit. All right. I mean, we could talk about Dune for 5 hours if you want. Like,
We're not
all right,
getting into Dune.
So this is what Dune is about.
No, that's a different podcast altogether. All right, so that was Sample and Hold. Let's get on to Mr. Soul.
Yeah, so Sample and Hold is the other sort of centerpiece, I think, of this record. I think Transformer Man and Sample and Hold kind of like hold it together. It's the two songs that I think personally sound 100% his vision. You know, like I think that those two songs, they're really incredible sounding. They're mixed really well. They sound great on the record, and those two songs on each side sort of hold the thing together. After this is a weird cover of Mr. Soul that he did with Buffalo Springfield.
Right.
And everyone kind of knows Mr. Soul. And I think he also did Mr. Soul on his Unplugged performance.
I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure that was one of the songs on that. Okay. The original version's great. I mean, Buffalo Springfield is amazing. I mean, it's much different Neil Young stuff, but you can really hear his influence in that stuff, and it's a great song. Mm-hmm. And this version of it is like a very puzzling reworking of it that is just synthesizer and drum machines and.
Right. All right. Well, let's give it a shot. Let's listen to a little bit of it. It's a strange, I should change, I don't know. Why don't you ask her? It's a strange, I should change, I don't know. Why don't you ask her?
It's just so cool sounding.
Oh, I happen to catch the end of it.
It's pretty short.
Yeah. So there was a demoed recording of this song. It was originally recorded on a 12-string guitar. And that version of it was never recorded.
Like back from the Buffalo Springfield days?
Yeah, back originally in, what is this? I think this is 66?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, written on a 12-string acoustic. The original version of Mr. Soul, circa fall 1966. Was, according to those who heard it, a slow, moody folk number with a dark edge, intensified by Young's D modal tuning.
Yeah, it's in drop D.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it was kind of similar to other songs around that time that he had written, Ohio, When You Dance, Cinnamon Girl, and Don't Let It Bring You Down.
Yeah, all those songs are, drop D,
So he originally recorded this song like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you're right, almost 3 years later, Young would open his Unplugged taping with Mr. Soul.
Yeah.
So it opened with Mr. Soul.
Oh, okay.
It didn't open with, what was the other one you said? Transformer Man.
I in my mind, that was the first song. But yeah, actually, now that you say that, I do remember that.
I'll have to go back to it. I don't remember that performance at all.
It's been a while since I've watched it or listened to it. And I know that a lot of times when the artists release those as records, they change the track listing.
So there's something here. There's something that's very strange about this. So Neil Young went through some kind of mental breakdown, right? Early on, after early fame.
Right after Buffalo Springfield and before.
Yeah.
Before
his solo
career.
I
definitely read about that he sort of it was one of the reasons for him leaving Buffalo Springfield and.
Oh my God. So I can't elaborate on the entire story, but just this excerpt right here was Young was in the hospital for 10 days, during which a battery of tests was run, including, according to Charlie Green, one procedure where they opened his skull.
Oh, wow.
Quote, "I'll never forget it. They drilled a fucking hole in his head to release pressure."
Yeah.
That's what really sucks.
So, where did we leave off here? We left off at we played Mr. Soul already.
Played Mr. Soul, and then the last song is Like an Inca.
Yeah, let's get into Like an Inca.
This is the third song that is from the rejected Islands in the Sun record, and I'm pretty sure that he ended up redoing this song in just acoustically. On a release that came out not too long ago. Neil Young's been releasing some stuff. I think it was on Hitchhiker. Was it on Hitchhiker? Okay.
Yep.
And there's a solo acoustic, and that version of the song, I think just makes, he's older, he's singing a little differently. I like that a lot more than this version of it.
So the mythology behind that release, Hitchhiker, which actually came out in 2017, was that he recorded it by himself and in one evening under a full moonlight, and just basically ran through all these songs, and this one being one of them, but it was called Hitchhiker at the time.
I knew that the song was Like an Inca, but called something else, and that Hitchhiker record is really cool.
So Hitchhiker, yes. Album was called Hitchhiker. The song was well, this was recorded in 77? So it was before this album, it was before Trans, therefore he changed it to Like an Inca.
Yeah, he must have either changed the title or...
Yeah, there was actually a lot of words that were changed too. I haven't given this this newly discovered recording a very good listen. I did discover some lyrics from a fan lyric page that says that the lyrics on the original, which I guess that release was the original, was a lot more introspective and kind of like had a lot of a deeper kind of meaning than what this version is like. So let's get into this version a little bit. Oh, here you go. This is different from the digital.
I have to assume that that's Nils Lofgren ripping that sweet solo.
It's not Neil Young. Yeah, I can tell. The style is different. You can actually hear it. Yeah, so this song, a little more silly. I mean, lyrically speaking...
To me, the lyrics seem to almost be about more ecology and conservation and sort of maybe thinking about climate change and stuff like that. I mean, the first couple lyrics are about, they seem to be about a changing environment. At least that's the message.
Oh, right. Okay.
That's the message I get from this song, that it seems to be about... whatever in the early 80s they were calling or thinking about climate change or global warming, or at least changing environments. It seems like Neil is trying to write a little something about that. But this song was originally intended to be on that Islands in the Sun record, which was kind of a sunny island vibe record that got rejected. It's curious to me that whatever that record sounded like got rejected, and then Neil offered them this record, something that was probably in the label's mind even more horrible sounding. Like they were thinking, we probably should have just bought that Island record from him. We probably should have just put out the Island record.
Yeah.
He gave us this fucking trans bullshit. And then the other thing about Trans that's funny is like the mythology is that this is the record that caused his record label to sue him for not sounding enough like himself. But really that's the record after this one, Everybody's Rockin'.
Oh, yeah.
After he put out Trans, David Geffen was like, all right, you need to give me a fucking rock and roll record. So he put out this incredibly, like, not serious 50s sort of rockabilly record that was even, in the label's mind, even worse than Trans.
Right.
And was even less commercially viable.
Right.
And it was that record that caused Geffen to sue Neil Young for not sounding enough like Neil Young.
Right.
Which he won. Neil Young won that.
Oh, okay.
That impending, like he came out the victor in the end of all of these court proceedings, and stayed on Geffen Records, like stayed on the label, I believe, for a while afterwards. But
I'm sure he had some repaying to do. Because you know that how he kind of eventually agreed to sign to that label.
I don't know if I know that.
So Geffen was starting the label, and Neil Young was one of the artists that he approached first, and he basically made it the sweetest deal he could by offering $1 million deal.
And complete creative control, I believe, which is how Geffen ended up losing the lawsuit, because they decided that, well, you gave him complete creative control. You have no
Yeah, that makes sense.
say over what these records sound like.
Absolutely. Yeah. But so Geffen was feeling a lot of pressure because, this was a new endeavor for him. I mean, he had been in the business before, but this was his baby to kind of create this label. I mean, he's doing fine now, so fucking it's not really that big of a deal.
Yeah, David Geffen's fine. Nobody needs to worry about David Geffen.
But so there was 5
doing
artists,
great.
I think, that he signed at once.
I think Joni Mitchell was one of them. I think Joni Mitchell might have been part of the roster.
Yes, because she also did the same thing.
Weird.
Right, where she put out records that just were not commercially viable. Elton John and Donna Summers were all part of this initial deal where he offered them all $1 million contract.
Wow.
And almost, I don't think any of them made do. Turned in a good solid record.
I mean, what would have been that Elton John record from the early 80s?
I can't remember. I've never been an Elton John fan.
I do not like Elton John, but I can't even imagine what record that would have been.
Yeah. I don't think Elton, from my own guessing, Elton John probably did not intend to make a bomb, but I think he did bomb, and then it just compiled on Dave Geffen, where he was just like, these fucking artists are all fucking me. Yeah,
right. And I think that Joni Mitchell delivered a very adult contemporary. She kind of took a kind of a hard turn towards adult, smooth, acoustic, adult contemporary stuff. And for some reason, even though you would think that was what would strike gold for people who like that kind of music, I think it just didn't work for her.
No,
at the time.
I guess not.
It doesn't sound like it worked for anybody. How did Geffen?
No, I mean this is the '80s too, early '80s. That was just a bad time for music. Pop music in the '80s was not great. It was a weird time
for music. Yeah, weird time because so much was changing, and nobody knew what the next thing was going to be. Obviously, synth pop and synthesizers and dance music and Michael Jackson and stuff like that, but not everybody had one of those artists on their label, so everybody was looking for who's going to be someone like David Geffen was got to be thinking, okay, who's going to be my rock or my anchor of this folk rock, who's going to be my anchor for whatever it is that Elton
I think
John
he
does.
also saw, hey, these guys are already huge producers.
And
these people are also having huge...
They were probably all getting out of record contracts that had expired, so they were all ready to jump to a new label, get more creative control, get more money, and do what they want because they probably had fulfilled their contracts with other labels. And then Geffen comes along and says, I'll give you complete creative control and here's $1 million. Just don't give me something that sounds like trance. And then
he didn't know that at the time.
Yeah, Neil Young was like, how about I record a record that sounds exactly like trance? And it's what the fuck?
Yeah. I will put Kevin's record away very nicely so that it's not damaged at all. Thank you, Kevin. This is a great record, and we're going to have to get together at some point and listen to the entire thing, because it's a little different than the digital release, and it's... I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it in its original form. So, in closing, I'd like to know, you were touching on it now a little earlier, your latest release, Glowing Cloud. You were saying something about how getting a new record ready.
Yeah, I think that what I had decided to do when I built, or was starting to cobble together my home recording studio last summer, I think that at first my idea was to make a full-length record. And because I just kind of assumed that that's what I'd wanted to do. But the more I worked on it and the more I just couldn't decide on what I wanted stuff to sound like or whether I wanted to... I just decided to sort of change tack a little bit, and instead of spending months and months, if not a year, on a 10, 12, 13 song record, just put out short EPs throughout the year. That way they're kind of quick and immediate. It's sort of whatever I'm feeling like at the time. It's they're a little more immediate, and I don't have to belabor it. I don't have to fucking redo the track order 900 times. putting out a full-length record is a lot of work. And just a couple years ago, my band Sweet Dreams put out a record, and it was a short record. There's only six, 7 songs on it, but that was a lot of work, and it took us forever to do. So I just kind of thought that instead of trying to do full lengths, I'm going to just do, or at least my plan is to do 3 or 4 EPs throughout the year. So this first one that I put out about a month and a half ago, All My Psychic Children, is 3 songs. It's pretty short. The songs are short. It's not very long. I think it's 8 minutes long. And then this next one that I'm working on, and I think I've got the songs pretty much fleshed out, I'm just finishing them up, is going to be 3 or maybe 4 songs, but again, shorter. And I kind of like the idea of putting out little EPs, or I like that because it keeps it kind of fresh. I don't have to belabor a 12-song thing, and when you try to put out a full length or something that big, unless you're just really cranking out the songs and cranking out material, it can be overwhelming. I find I can't think that big right now as far as I gotta write 12 songs. Are you kidding me? But I feel like every couple months I can put out 3 or 4 songs. And then I think my plan is maybe at the end of the year, if I really am still in love with all of them, I might compile them up and put them on vinyl. So I might, at the end of the year, if I've put out 3 or 4 of these and I still feel really strongly about them and I think that they're worth it, I might spend the money and compile them all onto vinyl and put out a kind of
a full length
album. A compilation of the year's EPs, and then maybe try to do that every year.
Right.
I don't want to get too much ahead of myself. I might lose interest in this tomorrow, but that kind of seems more fun to me, looking at it that way. Let's just put out 3 songs, and 6 months from now I'll put out another 3 songs or a single, and then at the end of the year you got 12 or whatever, and it's just
right.
It's more bite-sized. And I'm really terrible at promoting my own stuff. All I really know, the only way I know how to promote a record is to literally email it to all my friends and say, I think you might like this, you like music, you might like this. I don't know how to send shit to fucking, I don't know. Are there newspapers anymore? Are there magazines? There's no Phoenix.
Yeah,
there's nowhere to send.
Well, there's Motifs.
There's Motif, and Mark Clarkin wrote up a really nice review, and Rob Duguay wrote up a really great review for me, and it's really cool. Those outlets are still out there, but I know nothing about that anymore.
Right.
So, for me, taking it in little bite-sized pieces just makes more sense. That way, you've always got something kind of fresh. That way, I'm not spending 2 or 3 weeks or a month really annoying people about a full-length record, and then I've already bothered everybody about it, but I have nothing else to put out. It's kind of just put out, pepper it out.
I've heard about this recently from some artists where they're kind of trying to keep into consideration. It's well, how do I keep on touching my sphere? How do I keep on reaching out to the people
holding
that
people's attention?
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, the full length record. I mean, at this point,
unless you're on a label, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, unless like you said, you're cranking them out, or you're on a label. I mean, yeah, it kind of is almost like a moot point. The new way to make music. I mean, it's just about releasing a song at a time, really.
And so many people do that. Yeah, friends of mine who have their band stuff on Bandcamp, a lot of them are doing a song at a time, and that's really cool too. I mean, at the end of the day, whoever is listening to your music, they're listening to it most likely on a digital platform where it's all right there anyway.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you've got one 12 or 15 song full length or 4 EPs, they're all right there anyway.
Yeah.
This is I've only put out one, we'll see if my attention lasts for the whole year. But like, it's cool to like, you know, make an album cover because I do it all myself. Like I make, you know, the photo that's on the cover of the record.
Yeah,
I took that picture. That's my neighbor's house. I do it all myself, and it's kind of fun. It's more of a craft. It's
all
like,
the songs too. You've recorded everything by yourself.
All the songs on this are all recorded myself. I play all the instruments and I do all the mixing. And I handed it over to my friend Pete Lima, who's the drummer in my band Sweet Dreams, who has his own studio. He's really good at this stuff, and he mastered it. And
cool.
I think it's important to sort of hand it off. First of all, I don't know how to master a record.
Yeah.
So that's the first difficulty. Number two is that I think that you're too close to it. But I think that what I'd like to maybe experiment with, maybe for the next one or the one after that, is like handing off the full mixing to someone else too, and just to see if someone else hears it differently than me. You know, I've got a bunch of friends who would love to, you know, I think would be great at it.
Sure.
It'd be cool to like, and right now I would like, it's almost like
it's too precious.
It kind of makes me feel like panicky or nervous to like hand off the mixing to someone else, but you know, really that's how it's always been. And like for bands, like you go to a studio, you're not mixing it, but I think it would be cool to hear, you know, just to not take full control over that and to see what someone else can do with it and make it even better. But we'll see. You know, I might want to keep doing it myself. Part of the fun of this has been that it's my thing from beginning to end. You know, like I'm doing playing all the instruments, and mixing it. It's kind of like my little hobby thing. So we'll see. I'm enjoying doing it that way, but you know, I'm definitely open to that, and also having friends come and play on it. Like for the next one, I'd like to have some friends come over and add a guitar thing, add a keyboard thing, you know.
Right. Well, I mean, the way that you've done it so far sounds great.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
The current EP is 3 songs long. It's available. It's available everywhere. I know it's on iTunes, Spotify,
whatever,
and then the Bandcamp, of course, obviously,
and
for
then
sale.
Whatever your digital platform is. It's even on Tidal.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, you dig
that
deep
sweet
for this.
Jay-Z money, raking it in.
Cool, man. Well, then in that case, I'm looking forward to seeing what you come up with next. And,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'll be following. I'll be following on Bandcamp.
Cool. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me come and do this.
Thanks for
really cool.
Absolutely. Thank you for choosing this record. I've been dying to dive into this. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for the record.
I'm keeping it.
Final Envision is a Psychic Static production. Theme song written and performed by Jeff Robbins of 123 Astronaut.